As we move closer and closer to smart contracts on Cardano mainnet, the coverage from certain media outlets is just going to get wilder and crazier. Let's take a moment to revel in the absurdity. Ready? Let's go. Did you know that if you provide cutting-edge technology to a developing nation in the hopes of improving the quality of life of their people, you are in fact not a good person? You are a colonialist, you are a bad person, and you are trying to oppress those people. Oh man, it is becoming so apparent that CoinDesk loves us. They are so desiring to be in a romantic relationship with Cardano. I can only assume that all of the contributors, all the editors at CoinDesk have at home topless photos of Charles. And I'm not talking about the regular Charles. I'm talking about Charles after a 10-day fast. Sleek, high-performance Charles. And I'll leave it up to your imagination for what purpose they have those posters. They are so passionately enamored with Cardano that they have this new article where they talk all about Cardano, a little bit about Bitcoin in El Salvador, but a lot about Cardano, and it is entitled "The Headache of Crypto Colonialism. Blockchains Can't Build Roads." Did you all know that blockchains can't build roads? Apparently CoinDesk wants you to know in this article. So of course, this is exactly what you think it's going to be. The first word in the article that I can find here, Ethiopia. And then second line, Tigray province, the Tigray province, right? They want to hit upon the fact that there is civil conflict. There is conflict in Ethiopia. This article is bandying about some pretty charged labels. So for starters, let's be clear about what these labels actually mean. So I just Googled the word colonialism. The definitions we see are the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers, and exploiting it economically. Down below, we see a practice or policy of control by one people or power over other people. Down here, a practice of domination, which involves the subjugation of one people to another. So this is a pretty charged word, and certainly interactions between the Western world and, very developed parts of the Western world and less developed parts of the rest of the world have involved colonialism, and there were many, many injustices during what is often described as the colonial period. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about Cardano and its activities in Ethiopia. And, it's no secret Cardano has a Pan-African strategy, and they'd like to do the same things they're currently doing in Ethiopia and more. They'd like to do those things across to Africa. So it's important we break this down and ask ourselves, does what's going on actually fit any kind of conventional definition of colonialism? So if we look at any of these definitions, okay, a policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control. Do we think that Cardano or some group of people that Cardano represents are shooting to attain any level of political control over Ethiopia? I don't think so. I mean, right now, the Atala Prism Ministry of Education solution involves verifying degrees. I don't think there is any obvious direct attempt at political control there. Are they occupying Ethiopia with settlers? Not that I know of. Then we get to exploiting it economically. This one obviously is a little bit more complicated. In the context of this definition, we immediately think of things like European powers exploiting the natural resources of a country. This certainly happened in Africa and elsewhere. We can also look down here, control by one people or power over other people. Do we think that's going on? I mean, does the Atala Prism program, does that create any group of people who have power over the Ethiopian people, any people outside of Ethiopia? Pretty hard to see. A practice of domination, which includes the subjugation of one people to another. I don't think creating this solution that allows Ethiopian people to verify their degrees and get credit for their academic credentials. I don't see that as subjugation. I see that as a tool to create prosperity. So political control, no, can't see it. Occupying the settlers, definitely not happening. Exploiting it economically, that one's pretty broad. We'll have to look into that one. Control over their people, don't really see that. Domination, subjugation, don't really see that. So exploiting it economically, this to me implies an extraction of value at the detriment of the people. I would say that's like a fair definition of economic exploitation. If you're engaging in that, you're probably trying to extract some value at the detriment of the people. I would contrast this strongly with creating a product or service, offering it at a fair price, and having that be a good bargain for the people consuming that service. So in the case of Ethiopia, we've got this solution, this academic credential verification solution, and it's been built out for the Ethiopian government, obviously under terms that the Ethiopian government's happy with. I mean, they certainly signed the deal, and the Ethiopian Minister of Education seemed really excited about it. And it's being provided to a very large number of Ethiopian students. Their teachers are going to engage in it. That seems to be totally consistent with Cardano bringing a product and a service to the Ethiopian people on terms that are good for the Ethiopian people and provide value in the form of something that's never been available, the ability to easily verify your academic accomplishments. I think if it was some kind of a trap where, Cardano down the road suddenly charged, $50 USD to verify your degree, and they were sort of holding all of the Ethiopian students hostage within a tall prism, and there was no going back. And now Cardano is going to start charging them these amazingly high fees to verify their degrees and transcripts and other records. You could say that was an extraction of value at the detriment of people, but there's no indication that anything like that is going on here. All indications are that this is going to be a great product for Ethiopian students and a step forward. And even for companies trying to hire these former students, just being able to verify the credentials of the people they're hiring. I mean, this is a net good for Ethiopian businesses. It should be good for the economy. I don't see this as an extraction of value at the detriment of the people. If you allow people to prove their academic achievement, that should be good for the economy. And then you think of Cardano's other activities in Africa. They've invested in World Mobile. The whole goal of World Mobile is to provide internet to people in rural areas who don't currently have internet. Does that sound like exploitation? And again, it's not the scenario where they're creating this service and they're going to charge unbelievable fees for it. They're actually allowing local African business people to put up the nodes on this mesh network and run the node themselves. They're providing the technology and allowing local people to create businesses that'll create economic activity for the local economies. This all seems like a net good. It seems like a good way to add value to these local economies. It doesn't seem like an extraction of value at the detriment of the people. Critics might argue that this solution for the Ministry of Education is just the bait. This is just how they get their foot in the door. But if you look at all the things that Atala Prism proposes to provide for countries like Ethiopia, we have the education use case, we have government use cases like voting, we have health use cases, enterprise, finance, travel, social. You can go to this website for Atala Prism and check those out yourself. This is a lot of bait. This is a huge amount of bait. In fact, it looks like a good bargain. And of course, the accusation might be, well, this is all just bait, and then they're going to get Cardano in as a cryptocurrency and build out a payments infrastructure across the country. That sounds like a sin. Building out payments infrastructure. I mean, the developing world hasn't exactly not been plagued by bad economic systems, bad payment infrastructure, bad economic policy making, bad monetary policy, collapsing currencies. This all sounds like a net good, building out infrastructure in a variety of ways for the developing world. This sounds like a good thing. The subtitle of this article is Blockchains Can't Rebuild Roads or End Sectarian Violence, Famine, or Natural Disasters. This brings up a couple of things. The first of which is, what's the alternative? These things, famine, natural disaster, sectarian violence, the need to rebuild roads, basically lack of infrastructure. These are things that have been around for a very long time in the developing world. What's the alternative than this practice of providing cutting edge technology to the developing world that might help improve the life of the nation's people? I mean, is the alternative withholding the technology? Does that do anything different for sectarian violence, famine, or natural disaster? I don't think anyone thinks that crypto will directly end any of these societal ills. I mean, we have a lot of different ills that can affect a society. We have crime, famine, unstable currencies, bad economic policy, pandemics, plagues, drought, genocide, lack of infrastructure. These are all bad things. Crypto can only directly help with some of those. Connectivity, like the kind that World Mobile proposes to provide, can only directly help with some of those. Only some of those things. They might indirectly help alleviate some of the other things, but they can only directly help some of those things. So this is kind of a straw man argument. Will crypto provide an end to sectarian violence? No, but does that mean we should withhold providing this technology because it doesn't end sectarian violence? I think there are different societal ills that might be present in developing nations, and crypto might be able to help with some of those. But I don't think anybody thinks it will end civil wars, that it will end natural disasters. That's a straw man argument. Tied up in all of this are also questions about what kinds of regimes crypto projects should be willing to deal with. This article mentions that the US threatened to pull El Salvador's aid package following deep concerns around civil liberties, extrajudicial killings, and human rights abuses. And as we all know, Bitcoin people like Jack Mallers were instrumental in convincing El Salvador to go this Bitcoin adoption route. I think there's a little bit of a balance to be struck here. Certainly, I don't think any of us would advocate for Cardano to go to Pyongyang and strike a deal with the North Korean government. Certain governments you definitely shouldn't be dealing with. However, there are other times when we need to draw a distinction between the people and the government of a nation. Right now, Cuba is experiencing civil unrest. And I don't think it's any secret, a lot of the world would describe the Cuban government as a Marxist-Leninist government founded on Marxist-Leninist ideals. I personally would never support a Marxist government. However, if there was some kind of a fundraiser that was striving to provide water for the Cuban people because they're running out of water, or food because people are starving, I would probably be the first one to contribute to that kind of fund to send food or water down to the Cuban people, because there's a difference between the government of a nation and the people of the nation. And certainly, you in some way, you might have to cooperate a little bit with the Port Authority. If you send, if you send a container ship full of food and water down to Cuba, you might have to cooperate with the Marxist-Leninist Port Authority run by the government to get that food and water down to the people. So there's this balance to be struck in some cases. And I'm not saying that means that anybody should go to Pyongyang and deal with North Korea. Crypto guys have tried that before, and I believe they ended up getting prosecuted. They definitely got in a lot of trouble. And I believe one guy actually got prosecuted, and I think he ended up in the slammer, not sure. But not promoting that, but there is a difference between the people of a country and the government of a country. And sometimes to do good things for the people of the country, you might have to cooperate in some ways with the government of that country. Of course, this is nothing new. I think a lot of people would argue that liberal Western democracies spent a good portion of the Cold War negotiating with unsavory dictators. We can only hope that that same pattern doesn't repeat itself with crypto projects. But I think given how passionately and romantically certain crypto media outlets, at least crypto media outlets, how passionately and romantically in love with Cardano they are, we're going to see all sorts of these types of accusations and more, many, many more, as we get closer and closer to smart contracts on mainnet. And I will talk to you tomorrow.